Penguin Random House Audio presents NPR's Podcast Startup Guide. Create, launch, and grow a podcast on any budget. This is the author, Glen Weldon. Forward by Anya Grundmann, Senior Vice President for Programming and Audience Development at NPR.
At NPR, we think of ourselves as storytellers. That might surprise you if you equate the word story with fiction. We don't. Humans have used stories to convey information for hundreds of thousands of years. Storytelling is programmed into our DNA, quite literally, as DNA is essentially the story the body tells itself to make us who we are. There's a very simple reason for that. Information, in and of itself, is inert. Many discrete sets of data points that just sit there. Stories bring information to life. They're the dynamic infrastructure we construct to transform those inert data points into a series of moving moments that take our audience on a journey. Some of those journeys inform and educate. Some delight and surprise. Some spur action. Some offer comfort and companionship. NPR has been in the business of storytelling since our first broadcast on April 20th, 1971, and we've never stopped. What we have done and continue to do is adapt. That's where this book comes in. NPR's legacy of broadcasting news, telling stories, and starting conversations over the airwaves has made our transition into podcasts an organic one, since so many principles of audio journalism and storytelling are also critical principles of podcasting. Over time, we found new stories and new ways to tell them, which has resulted in some of the most beloved, critically acclaimed, and listened to podcasts in the world. At NPR, we talk a lot about driveway moments, the X factor that keeps listeners sitting in their idling cars amid the gathering dark after they arrive home from work so they can hear the end of a story or feature their companion on the last few miles of their commute. As podcasting has grown over the past half-decade, and as the field has grown more competitive, it's this way of thinking that has led more and more people to ask us about how we create our shows. This book will walk you through a certain amount of nerdy, but necessary audiophilic technical details, mics and mixers, wave files, and room tone. Mostly, though, it will provide a practical guide to how we at NPR approach storytelling by always foregrounding the listener's experience. You'll learn how and why our award-winning podcasts sound like they do, the best practices we've adopted, the hard-won knowledge we've earned over the decades. And yet, even if you follow the guidelines in this book to the letter, the podcast you make won't sound like NPR, because ultimately your podcast must, should, and will sound like you. This book is about storytelling, and your podcast is the story only you can tell. Good luck.
Introduction. Podcasting with a plan. Whoever you are, whatever you love, there's a podcast for you. More every day. Sports fan, knitting obsessive, culture vulture, armchair psychologist, political junkie, science nerd, foodie, left-handed Bolivian dental hygienist, give it time. You name it, there's a podcast about it. Podcasting's growth has been nuts, and it's continuing. In 2019, the New York Times counted more than 700,000 podcasts in existence, with 2,000 to 3,000 new shows appearing every dang month. Now, that's according to podcast hosting service Blubrry, B-L-U-B-R-R-Y, which, like so many other online services, has no use whatsoever for the letter E, which is how you know it's got its finger on the pulse, P-U-L-S. That same year, podcasting reached a major milestone when an infinite dial study by Edison Research and Triton Digital found that more than 50% of Americans ages 12 and over said they had ever listened to a podcast. Podcasts are booming because they speak to our collective obsession with wanting to know stuff. The faster the better, we're busy. And to enjoy stuff. Being busy can be stressful. We need downtime. Podcasts make these leaps in knowledge and pleasure available in the time it takes to tuck in earbuds, while freeing our eyeballs and hands to do other things. We listen while we commute, work out, walk the dog, cook, or drift off to sleep. But there's another growth curve. Hundreds of thousands of us are transforming our love of listening to podcasts into creating them. Maybe you're listening to this audiobook because you've got an idea or a message that's important to you. Maybe friends or family have said you should do a podcast. Maybe you want to explore audio storytelling, or maybe you heard that podcasts can help your business. Read, maybe your boss called you into their office and said, cereal? Why can't we do that? But, for restaurant supply sales. We've got to move these salt shakers, Jenkins. Or words to that effect. Most of us who love podcasts haven't thought too much about what goes into making them. They're just there for us. We wake up, open our phone, and our favorite podcasts are downloaded and waiting. But a lot of steps happen between the seed of an idea and the polished, finished, or unpolished, unfinished, that's kind of the charm too, sometimes, as we'll discuss, product. With so many people getting into podcasting, quality varies hugely, too hugely. Sure, the barrier to entry in podcasting is low, like very low, so low it's making a divot in the carpet. If you got a mic and a laptop, you can create a successful podcast, right? Wrong. Execution matters. Poor sound quality, sloppy or non-existent editing, undercooked storytelling, and a host of other issues render most podcasts unsustainable and unlistenable. The barrier to entry may be low, but the learning curve is steep. Sit down with any podcaster and you'll hear stories from the trenches, from forgetting to hit the record button to learning with slow dawning horror that the one interview subject they built an episode around dried up somewhere between the juicy pre-interview and the guarded, dull as dishwater recording session. While any project worth undertaking has challenges, many of the most common stumbling blocks, blind alleys, rabbit holes, and curveballs are avoidable if you know the questions to ask yourself first. That's what this book's about. Setting your sights on quality is crucial in a crowded marketplace where audiences will move on if they aren't instantly hooked by a story. And every podcast out there is jostling for attention, for listeners clicking, downloading, and sharing in the merciless algorithmic mosh pit called the Internet. Consider this. Typically, 20 to 35% of a podcast episode's audience drops out in the first 5 minutes. Getting and keeping audience attention is serious business. You have to give the podcasting thing your best shot to avoid the dreaded, all-too-common petering out phenomenon that some have labeled pod fade. You and I, however, will not be calling it pod fade because, come on. I'm here to help. I want to share what we at NPR know about keeping people listening. This book is the definitive go-to guide on how to podcast, powered by NPR's decades of experience, expertise, and acclaim in the audio space. Yeah, I know audio space. Last time. Promise. I'll share proven strategies from nurturing the glimmerings of an idea to getting your audience to hit play. You'll learn how to figure out the best structure and format for your podcast, storytelling techniques that hook listeners, important fundamentals on scheduling, budgeting, and legalities. No nodding off, it's important. The do's and don'ts for recording and editing, and the nuts and bolts for the launch and distribution of the final product. Some of this book's information has been adapted from materials developed by the NPR training team, which includes our wide-ranging catalog of tips and tricks for audio journalism and storytelling. But you'll get a lot more than that. How do the pros open a story in a compelling way that makes listeners stick around? What advice do they have for aspiring podcasters? You'll find insights from some of the most respected names in the NPR and podcasting universe, plus wisdom from our producers, writers, editors, sound technicians, and project managers who know what it takes to get a podcast done and done. To be clear, the goal here isn't for you to sound like NPR. It's to outfit you with the questions to ask yourself based on the hard-won lessons we've learned over the years that will make you sound like you. Because that, at the end of the very long day, is what your podcast must and should be. Your voice, your passion, your story. Your intrepid guide for this podcast odyssey? That'd be me, Glen Weldon. I'm an editor at the NPR Arts Desk. I've written a lot of film, television, and book criticism. I'm the author of 2 exceedingly nerdy cultural histories, and I'm a podcaster myself. For over 10 years, I've been a panelist and now co-host on NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour, a lively, when it works, roundtable discussion podcast about the latest television, movies, books, games, and comics. Like NPR, I was an early adopter of podcasts, but on the listening side. Nearly from the moment of their inception, you could find me earbuds in listening to The Ricky Gervais Show, Jordan Jesse Go, You Look Nice Today, Yeah Dude, and a host of others. I'm currently following 123 podcasts, comedy, news, narrative, trivia, and more. In this book, I offer you my perspective from both sides of the mic, as someone who creates podcasts and is a fan from the get-go. When we started Pop Culture Happy Hour at NPR, we hoped to channel our enthusiasm for pop culture into a show that would help people curate their movies, books, television, music, comics, and, increasingly, podcasts. We put it together on the fly and in our spare time. Translation. We didn't have a clue. Further translation, we screwed up.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?